Hello everyone and welcome to another ProGuides Wild Rift video. My name is Zyrene, and today we're going to talk about how to find the role that is right for you. It's not easy going into a new game where there seems to be all these well-defined and refined roles already, especially if you didn't play the PC version. The roles in Wild Rift have been tirelessly refined over years of trial and error in League of Legends. So the good news is, we have a really good idea about what draws each person to each role, and what you should be doing to figure out which you should be playing. But before we get into that, there's one last thing I want you to do before we get into the video, and that's answer our question of the day. Which role do you think is the least suited to you, and why? For me, I used to play a ton of mid lane in the PC version of League of Legends, but as time went on and I started to become a boomer, I just can't keep up with all the mechanical gods that reside in that role anymore. So now I sit in the jungle where I don't have to try to last hit and deal with an enemy laner at the same time. Let me know your answers in the comments below. Now, without further ado, let's get into the video. So how do you find your main role? Well, let's start off by talking about each role and what the best and worst parts of each role are. Let's start off with the Baron lane. This is the role for those who can only depend on themselves. You're the most isolated position on the map and the least rewarding to gank early on. There's only one person in this lane as opposed to the dragon lane, and you aren't near the dragon, which is the best early objective to take, and a lot of low economy champions are played in this role. But that being said, this is the most diverse role when it comes to champion pool. The Baron lane is typically home to bruisers, tanks, and fighters, but the best Baron laners find a way to come out on top in 1v1 scenarios, and will use anything to get an advantage, including picking champions that aren't common, suited to the typical layout of the lane, and focus more on winning their matchup head-on. Because of this, mages, marksmen, tanks, assassins, split pushers, and even sometimes the odd support champion will find their way into the Baron lane meta for the sole purpose of stomping their lane. We've already seen players pick up Vayne in the Baron lane to harass and make the lives of all tanks and melee champions a living hell during the laning phase. This lane is for those who don't mind playing dirty, but also know how to lose gracefully. You can play almost anything and play it well, and you also know that you're a part of something larger than just the lane. You look at the big picture, even if you're the person all the way on the edge of the photo. You don't throw yourself at a losing situation over and over again, believing in the power of anime and that the angrier that you get, the stronger you get as well. That's just not how it works. You think about it, and you know when to concede the lane and play safe, and not give away advantages to your opponent. You'll be in some of the roughest matchups if you play this lane, and you won't get much help from your jungler or team in those situations. So this is the lane for those who are dependable, selfless, versatile, and skilled.
They will regret opposing me. Witness true strength.
Next, let's talk about the jungle. This is the most cerebral role in the game, because you aren't spending your time trading blows with an enemy laner and trying to focus on last hitting minions and controlling a wave. You get to focus on pathing, planning your next 3 minutes out, and scripting interactions between you and your opponents. You focus more on the minimap than the actual game itself, and read the movements of your opponents, and can tell what state the lanes are going to be in minutes from now. You recognize opportunities even before they present themselves, and can create game-winning plays with your macro game knowledge. And you always seem to be at the right place at the right time, and that isn't by accident. You also need to be an emotional rock for your team. You will be the most blamed member of your team every single game, even when it isn't even remotely your fault. The reason is because you have the most agency in the early game, and you are actively choosing where to be on the map and where not to be. Every move you make has an opportunity cost, and you'll get blamed for not helping one of your teammates when they end up dying. You have the choice to interact with every lane in the whole game, and that is why others will depend on you. And you have to be okay with letting people down. Sometimes a better opportunity is on the other side of the map, and then the enemy jungler goes to punish your weak laners. Even if you aren't around and clearly you're helping somebody else for the betterment of your team, you made that choice. Junglers have to understand that they can't make everyone happy, and that they're the only role in the game that everyone has to interact with. And you get to choose who you interact with, and you can't choose them all. You make the tough decisions, and you like that pressure. You rely more on your brain than your fingers, and you can slot into your team's mid-game plan perfectly. Most junglers take center stage during the early stages of the game, and then fall back on defending their carries or engaging the right team fight to finish the game off. Junglers are not afraid of failing and find it to be a part of the process. They won't win every smite fight, but they'll immediately start thinking about how they can win the next one.
I smell fear.
Now let's talk about the mid lane. If the Wild Rift were a chessboard, this is where your queens would reside. Mid laners are the most central member of their teams, both literally and figuratively. They are destructive, skilled, and influential. Because they're in the middle of the map, they are equidistant to any point on the map at any time in lane. And they also know how to balance trading with their opponent, controlling their wave, and assisting their team. This is the lane for two completely opposite styles of champions. This is the lane for the mages, who want to manipulate the lane, keep their opponents busy, and destroy team fights with area of effect abilities. But it's also the lane for assassins, who want to leave their lane, rush through the fog of war, 1v1 their opponents, and single out the weakest or strongest member of the enemy team, to either give their team an advantage in numbers, or leave the enemy forces crippled and without the centerpiece of their strategy. Assassins want to get into the thick of the fight, cause panic, and then slip out with their mission completed and their lives intact. Mages, on the other hand, want to dish out devastation from the backline, locking their opponents down and creating an absolute victory for their team. The most mechanically skilled players play this lane to feel the constant back and forth they experience with their lane opponent. Those who think that they're the best or that they can become the best play this lane. They are the most influential players on the map next to the junglers, but have far more carry potential. If you don't like pressure, popping off, and having the ability to carry a game all by yourself if you play it right, then the mid lane isn't for you. But this is the lane for legends.
Gotta keep moving with the music.
The Dragon lane has two members in it, and we'll talk about each one individually. First, it's the Marksman, the ranged damage dealer, purely focused on offensive damage output. These players cannot be left unchecked, or they'll melt your entire team. But to get to that point, they cannot be left unattended either. Marksmen are the glass cannons of the Wild Rift. They are the most consistent damage dealers in the game, and can cause absolute ruin. But they are also always the easiest members of their teams to kill. Because marksmen typically lack defensive stats, they need to rely on two things to keep them alive while they attack: their positioning and their teammates. You have to always watch your feet, pay attention to the movements of your opponents, and react in the moment to any danger that may come your way. Because your defensive abilities are limited, your teammates have to cover the gaps for you, whether by providing space for you to navigate the battlefield, peel off and crowd-control divers who try to reach you, or by providing you with a shield to keep you alive through an onslaught of desperation. As your enemies feel they absolutely have to kill you. The best marksmen don't mind being in the backlines, but also know when to make the hero play and leap forward into the action to cause the most damage. They play on the edge of a needle, between getting instantly blown up with one wrong step and instantly winning the game for their team by outplaying the movements of their opponents and staying untouched throughout a fight. This is the role for those who like to power up. They know how to make their opponents fight them for every inch in the early game, trading back and forth, and focus on how best to approach a fight and even play it out in their heads before it happens, thinking about which specific abilities they need to dodge and then put their enemies in check. These players play solely for the thrill of the outplay. In the PC version of League of Legends, this role is called the ADC, the attack damage carry, because that's what they bring to the team: damage and the ability to carry.
All the world on one arrow.
The other member of the Dragon lane is less flashy, but not any less important, and that's the support. The support player understands that their team comes before themselves. They are there to enable their team's victory in whatever way necessary. They build towards specific items to keep their marksmen safe, to assist their mid laners' roams, team up and scout with their jungler, or reinforce their front line with their Baron laner. Supports typically want to focus on helping their lane partner flourish, but they can read the overall flow of the game and understand what they need to do to round out their team to become even harder to deal with. These players are some of the most annoying ones on the Rift for their opponents. The best supports help dominate their lane early game and have control of it. Early on, they carry the marksman, not the other way around. And then when the mid game comes around, the map is their playground, the ground on which they make the plays. These players are the backbone of the team and are central to supporting the strong parts of what makes their team good. Without them, the players who want to pop off and make amazing plays end up having their weaknesses exploited and find themselves struggling. Supports really are that important. There's a reason having 2 junglers has never been the meta in League of Legends, and that's because supports don't need that much gold to function, and it's better to have them active and helping their team throughout the entirety of the game, instead of sitting in the fog of war. Supports aren't tied down to minion waves like laners are, and aren't tied to jungle camps like junglers. Supports show up where they are needed most, and are truly the guardian angels of their team. It's sometimes a thankless job by those who can't realize just how much the support is doing, but they are absolutely necessary for clean victories.
A symphony of justice.
So now that we've covered every role, how do you find the one you want to main? Well, if one of those descriptions resonated with you, then I suggest you try it out immediately. If one of the downsides of a role made you feel like it made you lose interest, or it feels intimidating, I would give it a try still, but not stick with it if it feels like it's not quite right for you. The other way I recommend how to find your main role is to figure out the types of champions that you like to play. It's usually easier to find a champion that you enjoy playing more than what role you enjoy playing first. One typically leads to the other though, and I know that if you find a specific playstyle within a champion that feels great to play, there's going to be more of that within your main role. Not all champions play all lanes. In fact, almost no champion can be played to great success in every role. And the reason? Each role has specific traits that help you easily find success in that role. And champions that check those boxes end up finding their way into those roles eventually. So if you like a specific champion, chances are the boxes it's checking aren't specific just to that champion, but more indicative of a style of play that can be extrapolated to a role. So go out there, mess around, play with your friends, and swap stuff around. Play multiple champions, multiple positions, and when you find something that feels natural to you or something that excites you, stick with it. The only way to find out what really works for you is to try it, and to also confirm that it wasn't just a one-time thing. You'll quickly find yourself falling in love with a role and claiming ownership to it, or you could end up becoming one of those fill players who have no role but care about playing what their team needs more than anything else. Those are some of the best players overall, but don't spend as much time refining one style, even though they find success with all styles. And that's going to do it for our video on how to find your main role. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and are one step closer to figuring out what you should be maining and winning your games with. The choices you make with your gameplay are never set in stone. Even professional players who are years into their careers swap roles. And sometimes they even swap multiple times. So don't worry about finding your main role right away, and find what is fun to play. That's what will keep you coming back and investing time into your growth as a player. And on that note, it's time for me to get back to jungling. So I'll see you all in the next video. Have fun, stay safe, and good luck in your journey of finding the role where you feel most comfortable.